Great. I'm here at IndieBio with Ryan. Ryan, thank you so much for having us here.
Pleasure to have you guys.
Great. Ryan, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Ryan Bethencourt. I am the program director, venture partner, and co-founder of IndieBio. We're now the world's largest biotech accelerator. We fund 30 biotech companies per year, and we've, up to date, in less than 3 years, we've funded a total of 68 biotech companies.
What's the difference of incubating biotech companies instead of like a regular startup software, and what is the difference?
Yeah, so you know, when we were looking to start IndieBio, one of the challenges that we had when we went to capital raise was that a lot of the investors in Silicon Valley didn't understand our model, right? Software is mostly your desk and a computer, right? With biotech, you need a lab, and you need a real lab and a fully equipped lab. So I think later we're going to go on a little tour of the IndieBio space, right. And so what we're going to do is we'll talk through some of the equipment that you need to actually build biotech. But biotech is an exquisitely precise, deep technology. Beautiful for intellectual property, just a little more challenging on the equipment side and the initial capital investment. What we've done at IndieBio is we've changed things so that we have a co-working space and a co-working lab, biotech lab. And so all of the teams that we fund can just jump straight into the lab and start working day one, right?
24 hours per day.
24 hours per day. And then that changes the way that we do science, and it changes the way that we commercialize science as well.
How do you change the way How do you do this?
So the way we change science, it was through trial and error. So we've run 5 cycles of company building over the last 3 years. Right. And the way that we've really changed science is that we do trial and error at each time. So in the same way that we build companies and we test, do these talks work? Do these mentors work? Does this curriculum work? Does this way of working with the companies work? We do the same thing for science. Okay. How do we accelerate science? And so sometimes the way we do science is we start with the end outcome in mind. So one of the companies that we funded brew egg whites. Mm-hmm. So they basically take the genes from chicken egg whites, take that gene through recombinant technology, essentially create a yeast that has the genes for the chicken egg whites, and you brew it like you brew beer.
Come on. Wow.
And so out comes the proteins for the chicken egg whites. Right? It is the same thing. It is the same protein, right? And the way that we got there with the team, when we worked with them at first, we started, what is your end outcome? They're like, well, we want to make sure that we can actually make egg whites out of the proteins that are made of egg whites. We're like, okay. They had enough time to make one protein, but not all of the proteins they needed. Right. So what they did was they bought off the commercial market, instead of trying to manufacture them all, they bought off the commercial market egg white proteins, exactly the ones that they needed. Yeah. So they knew, one, they could make the recombinant protein that they needed, the egg white. And then 2, the ones that they didn't have enough time to make, they bought off the commercial market, and then they recombined them. No one had ever done this. You take all the proteins that make an egg white, recombine them, and does it make an egg white? Does it make something that looks white?
Wow.
It does. They found out, right? So they recombined it. There were some issues with the salts that were in it to make it taste like an egg white. Yep. Eventually they figured that out too. And so by the end of 3 months, they were able to show that they were able to actually brew these egg whites. They were able to show that they could take all these proteins, put them together, and make egg whites. And they were able to show that they could do this cost effectively. They could undercut the price of egg whites in the commodity market.
Amazing. Yeah.
Transforming the way that we produce egg whites, as an example.
Great. Another example, how did you find Carol Oliveira, our Brazilian star here in the Bay Area?
The Brazilian superstar from Belo Horizonte. And so Carol founded OneSkin. She founded OneSkin with 3 of her co-founders, all bioinformatics and stem cell scientists. Their initial aim was to grow skin, and it was a really neat idea, but I actually found her through a mutual friend. So a friend of mine, his name is Jürgen, he's the founder of a Pioneers Festival. It's a very popular festival in Europe. He was running an event in Belo Horizonte, and he called me and he said, there are these 3 amazing entrepreneurs. Carolina was the CEO of this company, OneSkin. You need to talk to them. And he knew that I was really trying to help Latin American startups. So Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, all the countries really accelerate their biotech infrastructure. And so he told me about them. I jumped on the phone with Carol. We had a quick Skype. we talked about what she was trying to do, and we were like, look, we can help you accelerate this process. Belo Horizonte is one of the more advanced cities for biotech, but still not quite as advanced as what we have here, right? And so we were able to help her accelerate her company, and a lot of her company, the team stayed back in Belo Horizonte, and they're still developing the product. So it was a win on both sides. So we were able to get Carol here for the business development office and some science, and then there's still a team developing the science in Belo Horizonte.
And she had a lot of challenge to overcome during this period, yeah?
Many challenges. It was very tough for her. She had issues with, I think there were 2 other co-founders that didn't work out. And it was very hard for her. She had to really face a lot of issues coming to the US, where it's not her native language. She had to learn how to pitch and how to sell in English well, and she did it. She figured it out.
And how is your work of looking for startups to be incubated? What's your job doing like this? Searching.
I go and I give talks all over the world. I basically go to where the scientists are. So at IndieBio, we turn scientists into entrepreneurs. We know we can do it. When we first started, we weren't sure, right? We were like, oh, well, maybe you can turn scientists into entrepreneur, but everyone says scientists aren't entrepreneurs, so it's not possible. Let's try. What we know is that not every scientist can become an entrepreneur, but many scientists can. They already have the skills, right? They can look into the unknown and identify new things, find new things in science. They write grants, they know how to raise money. You just have to teach them new skills on how to sell their science and how to sell their company as well. So I go to Cambridge, I go to the Philippines, Manila, I go to to Buenos Aires, I'm going to Sao Paulo, I'm going to Santiago in Chile, and I go and I talk to the scientists, the PhDs and the postdocs, and sometimes the MBA, the business students, and we talk about really what does it take to build a biotech, right? The days of the past where you had to be very experienced, plenty of gray hairs, and you had to raise millions and millions of US dollars. Tens of millions of US dollars, and wait 10 years to have a product on the market. They say for a therapeutic, it takes over $1 billion to develop one therapeutic, right?
Wow.
But that doesn't reflect today's biotech and the ability to start biotech today, right? Today you can raise a couple $100,000 and start building a real biotech company. Everything from food, like Memphis Meats, which grew the first lab-grown meatball. We were the first investor in them. They grew meatball, pork, beef, chicken strips, duck l'orange. They did all of this within a year. We actually found another company that stored digital data, so like computer data, ones and zeros, into DNA.
Oh.
Right? DNA is 1 million times more data dense than flash, the memory in our computers.
Come on.
So you can turn a whole warehouse into, one of those huge warehouses, acres wide, into a test tube. You can put the data into a test tube.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's transformative if you do it right. So, we're trying to inspire scientists, and I'm trying to inspire scientists by going to talk to them where they are, wherever in the world they are, and inspire them and show them that it is possible for scientists to build transformational companies that move all of humanity forward, right? We're based in San Francisco, but we really serve all 7 billion of us.
Great. And how much money do you invest for which percent of the company?
So we have a standard package. We invested $250K package. That's $250K in cash and $50K in lab and co-working space for a 4-month period. And for that, we buy 15% of the company, 1/5.
Great. And how is the mind of a venture capitalist? What you are looking for when you are looking for an entrepreneur? What things you like are good or bad?
Yeah. So the first thing I look for when I'm looking at companies, right? Because we fund really deep science companies, I like to use what's called first principle thinking. I like to understand what are the simple mathematics of what you're trying to achieve, right? And then we start from that place, and then we build up the science and see if it makes sense in a commercial market, a large commercial market. The most important thing is a team, right? Always. I would take an A-class team with a B-class idea over anything else, right? Even an A-class team with a C-class idea, you can probably do something with that. And so, the team has to be credible, both on the ability to execute on the business side. They don't have to be super experienced. They just have to want it really, really badly. One of on the business side, one of my favorite sayings is entrepreneurs should have an animal instinct, right? To survive, right? Like you start there. That is at least one of the founders should have that animal instinct, usually the business lead. Then you have to have the scientist. Are they credible? Have they published papers in this space? Does their science make sense? If you look at all the previous publications, does that make sense? For science, it's very unique. We're not looking to fund Nobel Prize winners. We're looking to fund people who are using existing technology in new commercial applications, right? Things that have dozens of papers applied and published, but new areas. And then finally, is the market big, right? Or is it transformative? Is the technology transformative? Do you cure a bunch of patients with cancer, or can you feed 1 billion people, right, with this technology? If your technology creates a 10% incremental increase in DNA sequencing or 20%, no one cares. So basically, you have to make a lot of money from the beginning with your technology, or you blow people's minds with the potential. Yeah. That's what we fund. Everything that falls in the middle, it's not for us.
Great. And when for a venture capitalist, what are the main challenges that you need to overcome day by day?
So for a VC, for an investor, there are multiple challenges. So I became an accidental investor. I'm an entrepreneur by background and by heart. My heart is really entrepreneurial, and general entrepreneurship and technology as well. And one of the challenges is, how do you help people, especially scientists, become entrepreneurs? They have to let go of what they were, right? They have to evolve. I almost call it a very spiritual experience, becoming an entrepreneur. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and all of your flaws and figuring out how you can support yourself and your company so that your flaws don't destroy your company, right? You build, and you have to build with people. This is why you have to have at least one other co-founder. And so the things that I worry about day by day are the team, first and foremost, then making sure those companies have enough money to grow. So if you're successful, how do you ensure that you have enough money so that the company doesn't run out of money and can't pay salaries? Even if you're successful and you run out of money, you're still a dead company. So you need to make sure that either you have sales that scale quickly, or you have access to capital through venture capital or other means to continue to grow your company. And then finally, as an investor, you always think, well, what is my exit, right? Where do I make money? And so, because we fund transformational technologies, my personal aim is for all the companies that we fund to be able to list on the public markets, to have an IPO, so that the founders continue to build companies that transform our world, right? And I look forward to, for me, I think that the future will be driven by entrepreneurs that come from emerging markets, that come from markets like Brazil, that go global, right? Brazil and China and India, and Southeast Asia.
Sometimes in Brazil we see some investors that are trying to invest their money in entrepreneurs, in startups. They try to invest in 60, 70, 80% of the company.
Yeah.
This is right or wrong?
Wrong. So that is predatory investing. We have a term for it here in Silicon Valley. We see those types of deals, and I won't swear, on camera, but we basically swear and say, "F that deal." And that investor. Investors have to understand, just as founders have to understand, that you have to leave enough incentive on the table for whoever is doing a deal, right? So for the investor, they have to understand that you have to incentivize the entrepreneur. It's better for the entrepreneur to own a big part of their company because they're going to work harder. They're going to stick with it through the tough times. And for founders, it's important to know that no, you can't own 100% of your company, because you'll own 100% of nothing, of zero. It'll be worth zero. Right? And so you have to meet somewhere in the middle. And for me, my personal view is that if you have a fair outcome where both people walk away shaking hands and thinking, I got a decent deal or a fair deal, that's a win. So I think that's always the approach that both investors and entrepreneurs should have. Right? This is a long-term relationship. This is not a single transaction.
Are there some indicators that you use often to evaluate some business, like lifetime value or customer acquisition costs?
Yeah. So there's some things, some metrics that I personally like to use. So depending on which therapeutic area. So at IndieBio, we invest across the board. Everything from food to therapeutics has very different investment horizons. We have some companies that leave IndieBio with literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue within 4 months, because they scale very quickly. And we have some companies that may take a couple of years to do a deal, but they'll do a deal for $200 million, which is a therapeutics deal, or $500 million. And so it's very broad. one of the metrics that I personally like to use is time to revenue. It's a new metric, right?
Yeah.
And so it's basically saying how long, as a science-based company, do you have until you start making money? And it's a very different way of thinking things, because then you can start saying, well, if we need to have a therapeutics on the market, it's going to take 10 years, it's going to be 10 years before we make money. It's like, no. Sign a licensing agreement in 2 years with a pharmaceutical company, and they'll pay you milestones, and your time to revenue now is 2 years rather than 10 years.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Right? And now you can survive. Now you don't have to be dependent on having to constantly raise venture capital money. The whole aim of a business is to make money, right? For a lot of entrepreneurs, I tell them one thing. I'm like, you want to raise venture capital. You want to raise millions of dollars of venture capital. If you change the name of the place you get money from venture capital to a bank, is that as sexy? No. I want lots of money from the bank, a loan. Well, you're going to have to repay that. It's not so sexy, right? And so the aim of your business is to make money, right? From your customers. That is your fundamental aim. And so you keep your eye on the prize.
And that's your goal.
That's my goal. With every single company that we fund, your eye on the prize. The customer matters most. Who is that customer? Find them and find a way to make money and service them profitably.
And what happened after these 4 months? Companies, if a company don't grow as you want.
Yes. If they don't grow as we want, then the markets take over. Right. So the reality of it is, some companies have failed post IndieBio. Many companies have succeeded. So roughly, about 50% of our companies have gone on to raise their full seed round, roughly around $2 million. About 70% of our companies, again, roughly, go on to raise some money. And then the other 30% either raise money or don't raise money. The ones that don't raise money are actually sometimes have revenue as well.
Yeah.
And then a couple of those die. So we expect a much higher mortality rate in terms of the companies that we fund. We expect that. You have to build a model to expect failure, right? It's necessary. But we've been surprised and hopeful where we've gotten to so far, and we hope it continues. But we're okay with the fact that many of the companies we funded that look very strong and successful actually will transform our world.
For sure. And last question, can you give a special message for all Brazilian entrepreneurs that are seeing you right now?
Yes, okay, so special message, so for all the Brazilian entrepreneurs, over here, there we go. So special message for all the Brazilian entrepreneurs, there's nothing special or magical about Silicon Valley, right? It is just the state of mind, right? When I go and I talk all over the world, everyone's like, oh, but you're in Silicon Valley, and I was like, yeah, but we raised money from people all over the world, right? To build IndieBio. We're funded by SOS Ventures, but our companies are funded by investors from around the world, including Brazilian investors, right? And so the reality of it is it's a state of mind. You have to believe that you can build the technology. And so my message for all the Brazilian entrepreneurs and all the Brazilian investors, so for the entrepreneurs, my message is build it, right? Build it and find a way, right? You may be the next company that changes the way Brazil is looked upon by the world as a place to build iconic global companies that change all of us. It makes all of us better, our lives better. And for the investors, my message is invest and believe in the people in Brazil, right? Like take a risk. You may lose your money, but you may actually create the next, Google of Brazil, right? Or Mercado Libre of Brazil, right? So, it is transformational.
Great.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Okay.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan here from IndieBio.
Great. Okay.